Well, to debate all of this and more, I'm joined by the PBD podcast Angry Patriot, Vinny Ashana, TikToker and Democratic congressional candidate, Kat Abu, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, and the Conservative commentator and former RNC spokesperson, Elizabeth Pipko. Well, welcome to all of you. Elizabeth, let me start with you, because you were one of the very, very rare Trumpers at the White House Correspondents Dinner, which had no president and no comedian and looked to be an absolute crashing bore. The only highlight, it seemed to me, though, was an interesting admission by Alex Thompson, one of the journalists who won an award there.
One serious note. To my bones, I believe that reporting and the White House Correspondents Association is as necessary as ever. President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception.
What was it like to be there as a pro-Trumper? And has that event got any relevance anymore?
I actually don't think that it does. I'm sad that I finally got to go when it was no longer relevant. You mentioned there was no comedian. I want to point out the event was still very much a joke. It was very strange for me to be there. I have to admit, the program started a few minutes in. My jaw dropped because I see a room full of journalists basically applauding themselves, patting themselves on the back for admitting that they missed the story of Biden's cognitive decline and will never make that same mistake again. Meanwhile, I'm remembering how many times I was attacked for bringing it up, how many times countless people on the right, or even those completely unaffiliated with politics, were attacked for bringing it up. And now I'm watching journalists, which are supposed to be responsible for bringing that information to the people and actually holding the White House accountable, even when they don't agree with those in there. And the fact is, these journalists were very much upfront with the fact that they did what they were supposed to do. They made a really tiny mistake. They promised to never make it again, and they should still have all the trust and all the faith of the American people. I thought it was very strange. I didn't expect any of it, but I can only imagine if Donald Trump was in the room, it would have looked very different. But for me, I don't think Thompson's admission meant very much, and I actually thought it was pretty hypocritical to sit in there and watch all these people support their own work, their own mistakes, and the fact that they themselves are responsible for the fact that trust and faith in the media is at an all-time low.
A really interesting perspective. Tim Miller, I saw you raising your eyebrow there, but there is a truth there, because it was a bizarre spectacle of a liberal-skewed mainstream media basically openly admitting we dropped the ball massively on Biden's ability to be president of the United States. But many would argue, particularly on the left, I would think, well, it was entirely self-defeating, this ball dropping, and probably deliberate. You didn't give it the same attention you would have given it if it had been, say, Trump. And the consequence of not holding Biden to proper account was that actually Donald Trump got re-elected.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think this is the one area maybe where I can agree with you and the co-panelist is I think that this dinner is pretty stupid. I think the last thing that we need is a self-congratulatory ball for political journalists. I do, though, bristle a little bit at, I'm not speaking about you, Piers, per se, but at right-wing commentators talking about how they think that the mainstream media is biased and unfair. And, if you go to Fox or Steve Bannon's podcast or the Daily Wire, I mean, you see like North Korea-esque coverage of what's happening with the president of the United States as he's single-handedly tanking our economy. And so, I think that the coverage on Fox and on other right-wing media outlets is, if anything, worse than the mainstream media's coverage of Democrats, which is not perfect by any means. And so, I just don't know if the right-wing media folks have a lot of great credibility when it comes to demanding unbiased coverage.
But Steve Bannon goes out and says, I am a Trump supporter. No one at NBC or Axios or Politico or anywhere else goes out and says I'm a Biden supporter. I saw Jake Tapper a few weeks ago say I'm not on the left, and I sat there with my jaw on the ground. The fact is, they believe that they are actually moderates. They believe they're telling the American people the truth, and they believe they're getting away with murder because they continue to throw their own bias into everything else that they report. The American people are not stupid. What is sad is that the journalists in our country believe that they are. They believe they can tell them how to vote and how to feel, and they will not be able to do the research for themselves. Donald Trump is not worried about victories in the media because he knows the American people not only elected him to do what he's doing, but can figure out what he's doing without, reading through a couple of headlines in the mainstream media.
All right, Vinny, two things there. First of all, let's talk about the admission at the White House Correspondents Dinner. And by the way, I agree. If the president's not there and there's no comedian, there is no point to that event. It's pure navel-gazing by the journalists. I went, it used to be the convention that if you were a news anchor, and I was at CNN for 4 years, you got to go with a celebrity. I got taken by Goldie Hawn to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We ended up partying at the Vanity Fair party. That is glamour, ladies and gentlemen. I had a great time. Then I went with Gerard Butler on a mandate the year after. So those days are clearly long gone. So I think the event has probably had its time. But the admission, Vinny, and welcome back to Uncensored, always great to have you. The admission that the media dropped the ball on Joe Biden from one of the award winners on the night, saying, me included. Many will say, well, why did you drop the ball? Was it an accidental dropping of the ball? Or was it a quite deliberate ignoring of the obvious fact that he was incompetent because they didn't want to help Trump in any way? And ironically, by not doing their job with Biden, many might argue that's how Trump got elected.
It's a joke to me that we're trying to pretend all these people from just the left-wing media, period. It was a joke. Everybody knew, Piers, but they were told to shut up and they were told to play ball. And all of them, Piers, they're all making the adjustment. From Chris Cuomo to Stephen A. Smith, everybody now is like, oh, we messed up. Guys, we're not like the left. They're exactly like the left, Piers. I'm not going to give them any leeway. They all knew, but they kept their mouth shut because it's not Trump.